Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Deku Was the Chainsaw Man, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Izuku stares down at the ball within his grasp. His fingers curl around its spherical shape, clenching tightly to not let it slip away. All of his classmates are watching with anticipation after Katsuki's fireworks show, expecting something of equal level. Though his teacher doesn't have any expression other than resting bitch face, Izuku is pretty sure that Aizawa is in a similar state of suspense. There's not much to be done should he transform right here and now, but he knows that he can't just simply toss the ball normally either. Weighing his options, he shifts his hold on the ball. That's when he gets an idea. He opens his mouth to ask Aizawa about the rules of the throw, but something comes out other than words. Warm murky fluid bubbles up the boy's throat until it breaches the exit of his mouth. A jet of red liquid spills out, the copper taste making Izuku retch. The firm grip he has on the softball suddenly becomes very weak, loosening and allowing it to slip free from his fingers. He hunches over when his sides ache and the pain blossoms into another wave of blood climbing out. Izuku's throat burns more than his ribcage as he coughs on his own bodily fluids. Midoriya, Quirk moves forward to help her friend as soon as she notices his extreme nausea. But the other students crowd in front of her, blocking her path. They express their own concerns and drown the girl out. Bro, are you okay? Eiichiro refrains from pushing past the collection of students. His arms extend and retract, unsure of whether to reach out and help or stay back. Nod your head if you require CPR, Tenya tries shouting over the concerned crowd as he robotically searches with a stiff neck for some sort of medical practitioner. A vein bulges from Aizawa's forehead before he has enough of the commotion and silences them all in one fell swoop. Everybody just calm down. The class recoils in fear from the scary shout. Meanwhile, Izuku still struggles to get a hold on his breathing. Midoriya, are you feeling alright? Can you tell me what's wrong? Aizawa places a consoling hand on the boy's back as he leans down to the same level. I'm fine, sensei. Izuku wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. The blood on his lips smears across his cheek from the motion. Another coughing fit stalls the boy's speech. When he finally gets a handle on himself and he comes up with an excuse, his eyes widen with realization as he says, it's just allergies. All the times that his mother had similar hacking habits suddenly set off alarms in his mind. Allergies don't cause internal bleeding. Aizawa pinches the bridge of his nose as an exhibited sign of vexation. When his hand falls away from his face, he doesn't hide his frown either. I think you should go see Recovery Girl. Though the teacher's tone conveys an amount of worry Izuku usually only hears from his mother. Izuku forces himself to stand upright, trying to blow off the incident as casually as he can. Really, I'm fine, but his hoarse throat heaves a nasty cough that puts him back down. Izuku covers his mouth with his hand as he gags. When he pulls his hand away, blood dots his palm. Let me rephrase that. You're going to see Recovery Girl. Aizawa's tone turns stern as he helps Izuku regain some composure. The elaboration of that sentence being an order and not a request forces the boy to numbly nod in agreement with his teacher. Somebody should walk him there. A few of the students part for Kyoko when she speaks up amidst the grouping of them all. When the girl gets a few stares, especially a sly one from the horned pinkett, she blushes profusely. Tita makes sure he gets there safely. Her earjacks wriggle with her arms as she tries to conceal her embarrassment. Tenya stiffens into a statued stance. Excellent idea. I volunteer, oblivious to the girl's mortification as he offers himself for the suggested duty. I could take him. The boy with multicolored hair surprisingly proposes himself to perform the task as well. Though his demeanor is far more casual than the bespectacled boy's. I was thinking maybe myself. Kyoko timidly taps the tips of earjacks together the way one would with their fingers. The shy stature and quiet voice would have gone unnoticed if not for her pink classmate's shit-eating grin. Or I could. The pinkett teases her peer by getting up in Kyoko's personal space and wiggling her eyebrows suggestively. Nobody needs to go with him, but Aizawa puts a stop to the fun with his usual grumpy attitude. The teacher turns towards Izuku and turns down his temper to ask, you're capable of getting to the nurse's office alone, right? Why yeah, I'll be fine. Izuku shakily nods before facing his class and forcing an assuring smile. Thanks for offering though, everybody. Of course, Tenya returns the smile with one of his own. But Kyoka's having a hard time showing any equal optimism. She quells her worries well enough to look Izuku in the eye and say, "You'd better be okay." To which Izuku gives her a single nod in response. Wow. First day and someone is already about to croak. The blonde with a lightning streak in his hair whispers to the bald-headed boy beside him. Then he realizes there's a girl that resembles a frog on his other side and awkwardly whistles. No offense. He scratches his head nervously with a forced laugh in a failed attempt to make the wisecrack slide. As Izuku heads for the facility doors to go back inside, he notices somebody watching from the sidelines of the field. Recognizable by the man's extremely gaunt appearance, the boy recalls the skinny blonde as the person he'd bumped into while looking for his class in the halls. Though the odd fellow's eyes are sunken in, bright blue orbs find Izuku's eyes and convey compassion. A breeze brushes through Izuku's green curls as he passes by the man's hiding spot. Then he steps inside UA and leaves the blonde behind. Though he's curious about the stranger watching the performance of he and his classmates' quirks, he's far more concerned about the recent revelation of his mother hiding her bloody cough from him. That is, if his hunch about her using the same excuse as him is true. The boy's thoughts linger on his mom's well-being as he heads for the nurse's office and not his own, despite a few more wet coughs escaping his mouth on the way there. When Izuku finally reaches the closed entrance to Recovery Girl's small infirmary, he overhears the tail end of a joke muffled by the barrier. "Did you hear about the guy who lost his whole left side? He's all right now." The comedian's voice is one that the boy is all too familiar with, that he knows exactly who's on the other side of the door before he slides it open. Present Mike sits on the edge of a medical mat where he has the old nurse giggling. The hero notices Izuku before she does. "Hey little listener. Don't you know you can't tell a knock-knock joke without knocking first?" Izuku blushes in embarrassment before trying to pull the door back closed. I didn't think about." His tugs on the sliding mechanism work to no avail. "Sorry." His face flushes even redder when he hears Present Mike laughing along with Recovery Girl. "It's no problem, dearie, come on in." The school's nurse ushers him to enter her office once she stops giggling. Present Mike nods next to her. "It was only a joke, kiddo." Izuku notices the hero's usual hairstyle of a singular spiked tuft has been opted for a neatly tied man bun. It's odd seeing the pro during his off hours, an ordinary outfit instead of his uniform, making him appear like a civilian. Don't tell me y'all ain't got a sense of humor. Mike must notice Izuku staring since he takes to twirling his pencil stash like it's a nervous tick. Oh, I dunno how I didn't realize. I listen to your podcasts all the time." Izuku jumps to assure his idol that he didn't take any offense before bashfully rubbing the back of his head and admitting his stare was starstrucken instead of solemnity. Hearing that, the hero perks up with a widespread grin. "Ho ho, a fan, eh?" He snatches a sticky note from a dispenser and steals a pen from Recovery Girl's white coat before asking, "What's your name, little listener? I'll give ya an autograph and a shout out the next time I go live." Izuku's head nearly snaps off from the amount of whiplash that goes into his eager lean forward. Really? That'd be amazing. Tiny glimmers of light dance in his eyes like stars twinkling in the sky. Present Mike laughs before gently bopping the boy on the head with his pen. "Not without your name, it won't be." Oh, right. Izuku slaps his hand against his face when he realizes his mistake. Then he quickly bows in order to properly present himself. "My name is Izuku Midoriya, yes sir." Recovery Girl shakes her head in disbelief. "No need to be so formal with this goofball, Midoriya." The nurse gestures with her specialized cane towards the hero. "Hisashi here is probably more childish than you are," before handing him two small white devices. "It's a wonder Nezu ever allowed you to teach." "Hey." Present Mike defensively whines despite not actually taking any offense to the teasing. His voice reverberates throughout the small medical station, shaking the window's pane and nearly causing the glass to burst. "I told you to be cautious about using your quirk when you get too rambunctious," which earns the hero a smack on the head from Recovery Girl's walking stick. Due to the cane's abnormal size and depth, it leaves a giant welt on the man's skull. "It's shouting like that which led you to needing those hearing aids," She gestures to the two tiny objects that she handed him as though she never walloped him though. Hearing aids, Izuku disregards the nurse's poor bedside manner for the same reason. He's intrigued by the two pods that the hero sticks into the crevices of his ears. He wouldn't be here if he didn't damage his hearing with his own quirk all the time, Recovery Girl tuts with a wag of her cane. The blunt object's movement puts the hero on edge, making him wince reflexively. One of my drawbacks, kid, everybody has them, Mike chuckles to calm his own nerves before snapping his fingers together and pointing towards the boy, but don't go telling anybody about it, okay? It's our little secret. Oh, of course. I won't tell anybody. Izuku nods like a bobblehead that's been jostled to work to show his allegiance. Which earns him the hero's autograph as an award. Now, why are you here, young man? Recovery Girl diverts her attention from present Mike to address Izuku once she's finished finalizing the man's report. The elderly woman adjusts the visor fixed to her face like the glasses to get a good look at her patient as she mumbles, that hardass wouldn't have sent one of his students here during class if it wasn't for good reason. Izuku's eyes widen in shock when he hears the way that Recovery Girl refers to his teacher. Oh, Aizawa-sensei ain't so bad. He feels obligated to defend the man after seeing how concerned Aizawa had been for him. Mike laughs, hard. He laughs so hard that he has to hold his stomach with one hand and slaps his knee with the other. Good to know you've already seen through his tough guy act. The hero even has tears in his eyes that he needs to wipe away with a flick of his finger. Hush. Let the boy finish. Recovery Girl gets him to quiet down when she threateningly hoists her cane over her head. Mike recluses with his arms defensively shielding himself as he nods to show his surrender. Izuku blinks as he witnesses the odd interaction. But he shakes it off just as quickly as it passes. I just started coughing up. Blood. The matter of his health is much too glaring for him to worry about heroes getting abused by old ladies right now. Mike and the nurse share a quick glance before Recovery Girl starts searching through one of her desk's drawers. Really now? Any theories as to why? Izuku shrugs and stares down at the floor. No. That's why he sent me over. Grinding the crook of his shoe into the tile suddenly feels as oddly calming as it did to pet Pokita. Alright then, have a seat and I'll run some tests. Recovery Girl finally finds the tool that she was searching for and gestures to have Izuku sit down. In order for the nurse to make room, however, she first shoos her other patient away from the spot. As for you, you're a grown pro hero, quit your whining and get back out there. She practically chases present Mike out. But I didn't even get a lollipop, Mike complains like the man-child he is as he's pushed out the door. His heels screech against the floor in protest as he tries to stop the madwoman from forcing him to leave. Shoo, you buffoon, but it's no use when she resorts to violence again by raising her giant walking stick. The massive syringe-styled cane swings like a broadsword that the hero has to dodge with a duck. Nice meeting you, Midoriya, Mike shrieks with a wave goodbye before fleeing the area with speeds that would rival the pro-hero Ingenium. The blonde even manages to kick up dust in his wake like smoke from an engine's exhaust pipes. You too, Izuku calls after Mike in the hopes that the hero can still hear him. Then, Recovery Girl slides the office door closed. Now, tell me, when did you start coughing up blood? The nurse uses a stethoscope to check the boy's heartbeat first. During our quirk apprehension test, Izuku glances nervously at the other medical equipment she has on standby though. Some of the tools look like they'd cut more than his chainsaws once he transforms. That man. Skipping ceremonies and straight to business. Recovery Girl's face tightens like she just sucked on a lemon. She finishes listening to his heartbeat and begins to take his blood pressure while asking, was it outside? Izuku raises an eyebrow, surprised that the woman guessed correctly. Yeah. He wonders where she's going with her analysis so far. You could have just been suffering from nerves or the heat. You seem like the jumpy type that you might get a case of the first day jitters. The nurse shares her theory as she moves on to the next test. A weird bracelet straps itself around each of Izuku's wrists like a pair of handcuffs. Oh, you think? That's a relief. Izuku relaxes when he hears that his condition may not be so bad. He has a sliver of hope that his mother may just have seasonal allergies after all. Or, oh dear, until Recovery Girl reads the output on the device attached to Izuku's wrists. The boy stiffens when he hears the tone of her voice. What is it? He worries for the worst as he tries to gauge her pensive frown. Recovery girl removes the device from Izuku's wrists to replace with a wooden mouth stick. Let me take a quick swab from your mouth, she instructs him to open wide so that she can place it under his tongue. Izuku tries not to gag on the stick in his mouth as he lets her move it around to get a sufficient amount of saliva. Once Recovery Girl is finished, he swallows the remaining amount of spit that she didn't get. Good boy. He's suddenly taken by surprise when she shoves something else into his mouth though. Have a gummy? Much to his relief. It's just a sweet treat that tastes like cherry once he begins chewing on it. Thanks, he mumbles through a mouthful of the small snack before swallowing it down. Recovery Girl sticks the DNA sample into a machine that quickly provides results. The nurse looks through a microscope at the slides. Oh my, her tone from earlier hasn't changed. Midoriya, does anyone in your family exhibit similar coughs often? She spins around in her chair to face the boy that she's taken to studying. My mom. I think. Izuku begins squirming from his spot now that his worry has ventured from himself to his mother. He finds it hard to sit in place as he waits for Recovery Girl to deliver his diagnosis. I see, the nurse hums as she cross-references her findings once more. Only after she's certain of the result, she shares with him her discovery. I believe you've inherited a disease through your gene pool. Izuku's fingers curl to make his hands into fists when she adds, quite severe too, I'd say. He finds it hard to believe. The room suddenly seems out of focus. He sits back, trying not to pass out. Really? He breathlessly asks for confirmation that this isn't some elaborate prank set up between her and Present Mike. He idly waits in denial of the harsh reality. Yes, I'm surprised you failed to notice or be checked until now, but Recovery Girl pulls no punches and tells him the truth. She sounds sympathetic but it still hits the boy hard. What do I do? What can be done? Izuku sits forward to lay his head in his hands as he tries not to cry. If it were just him, he'd not be so worried. His mother though, he feels himself becoming numb when he realizes that she's been keeping her condition from him all this time. Not much, I'm afraid. Recovery Girl gets up from her chair and uses her cane as a crutch to get near the boy. Once she's in his proximity, she places a consoling hand on his knee. First and foremost, I think we should call your mother. She tries to sound as soothing as possible when she sees how rough he's taking the news. Oh, yeah. He numbly nods when he thinks about actually talking to her about it. Now that he's inherited her sickness, he can only imagine how she'll take the news herself. She's gonna freak out, he sighs in sorrow. I can imagine. Recovery Girl nods in understanding. She gestures to a spare cot for him to lay on before going for the landline phone. In the meantime, you can rest here and take the rest of your classes off. Hearing that he'll be kept in the nurse's office and isn't allowed back to class, Izuku sits up straight with a sudden renewed source of energy. He tries to argue, but. No buts, young man. I don't want you straining yourself any more than you already have, but gets met with a whack on the head like Present Mike had. Izuku rubs the throbbing bump that Recovery Girl leaves behind. But it's the first day. His whine is both a mixture of physical and emotional pain as he surrenders to the nurse. He's led to the bed against his will and plops down in defeat. Which means you won't miss much. Recovery Girl has the kindness to offer him assurances at the very least before leaving him to wallow in self-pity. I'll write the proper notes for your teachers that you should be fine. Okay. Izuku slumps over to rest his head on the bed's soft pillow with a sigh. Before long, he's closing his eyes and drifting off to sleep. The boy dreams of drowning. He inhales his own blood, left unable to breathe. All that he can see is a deep depth of red. The liquid washes over him as he sinks deeper and deeper. He can't swim no matter how hard he paddles. There's a scream that bubbles up in his throat but it comes out as a silent cough. And then, he looks down at his chest, feeling the warmth of his heart. The string that hangs from his sternum floats in the clouded crimson sea. Izuku grabs the small handle and pulls. Pockiter, Izuku shoots up from his bed in a sweat. His body heaves as he breathes heavily, every pant as rugged as he looks. The green curls atop his head are matted down, just as drenched as the rest of himself. Izuku looks down to see he has a finger interlocked with the small handle of his chest's pulley string. A strange sound escapes his mouth, a mix between a sob and a choked cough. Then he lets the wire go and falls back down onto the cot. It's not his own. He remembers, he's in the nurse's office. The clock in the corner shows that hours have passed since he fell asleep. His mother should be arriving by now. Izuku climbs off the cot and looks around for Recovery Girl. When he sees that the nurse is nowhere to be found, he works up the courage to slide open the office door himself. He nearly has a heart attack when he finds someone on the other side. The girl opposite of him jumps in equal alarm, a startled shout escaping her lips. Jiro, Izuku recognizes his friendly classmate but can't conceal his surprise to see her. Kyoka is just as shocked by the sudden removal of the barrier between them, but contains her composure in contrast to the boy. She averts her gaze and twirls a jack absent-mindedly. Hey. Izuku adopts her strategy, avoiding looking directly at her while adorning a mild blush. He fidgets in place as he tries to think of something to say back before settling on asking, "What are you doing here?" Suddenly, Kyoka flares up with her line of sight lifting to glare at him. "I came to check on you, stupid," she snaps incredulously. Realizing her reaction was a bit much, she recoils and simmers down. "I mean, I was worried about you." Her gaze falls back to her feet. Izuku blinks after registering her outburst. It takes him a while to process, but he eventually jumpstarts his brain when he scratches the back of his head. "Oh, I never did come back to class, huh?" A dry laugh escapes his lips when he thinks about his first impression to his peers. "Everyone kept asking about you," Kyoka consoles him as though reading his mind. When Izuku hums skeptically, she shrugs. "Well, mostly everyone." Her own laugh is just as null and void of humor. "Like you said, that wasn't my best impression to make on the first day," Izuku means to sigh but groans instead as he places his head in his hands. "Could have been worse." Kyoka tries assuring him again with a shrug but then remembers that he can't see her with his hands covering his eyes. She tries cheering him up another way instead. "I took some notes for you." "Oh, thanks," which does manage to make him look up at her. He pauses and asks, "So, classes are over, huh?" Kyoka nods in confirmation before tilting her head to the side. "Are you able to head home now?" "I guess." Izuku glances around as though he's searching for the answer. When he finds nobody other than himself and Kyoka still, he shrugs and explains, "Recovery Girl called my mom and I fell asleep waiting for her." "Gotcha." Kyoka nods. A moment of silence passes between the two before she takes to her habit of curling an ear jack on a finger. "I was gonna say we could walk together, but..." Izuku offers her a smile as he responds, "Maybe next time." "Next time," to which Kyoka agrees and smiles in return. Her lips level out as she looks past Izuku and remembers they're standing outside of a medbay. "Hey. Can I ask you what that cough was all about?" Izuku's mind buffers, the boy caught off guard by the question. He looks away, mulling over his answer in his head. He suddenly understands, to an extent, why his mother had kept her illness hidden from him. It was nothing major. He blows off the matter by forcing his smile to come back. "I'll be fine." Though, Kyoka doesn't seem so convinced. "You know, I can hear a person's heartbeat to tell if somebody is lying to me." Her soft tone sets Izuku on edge and he's suddenly very aware of the pounding organ in his chest that she's speaking of. The girl reaches out, quickening the thrumming before her hand even makes contact with his chest. "But yours ever since I met you has always sounded." Her eyes are as alluring as her lingering voice when Izuku looks into them, "different." Izuku's lips part, exhaling the breath that he didn't realize he had been holding in. Different," he stutters as he feels the warmth of Kyoka's gentle hand transferring to his tone of voice. The girl nods, leaning in with the movement, her lips also parting to say more. Oh my, but there comes an intrusion to their private moment before things can continue. A woman with green hair like Izuku's glances between them as she coyly asks, "Am I interrupting something?" "Mom." Izuku jumps back at the same time that Kyoka retracts her hand. He stares at his mother like a deer that's been caught in headlights, his face as red as a tomato. Kyoka matches the boy's hue, glowing like a red ruby. She flails about in such discomposure that Inko can't help but be reminded of her son as she squeaks out, "Mrs. Midoriya. I mean, you must be. Please, call me Inko, dear." The greenette gives Kyoka a polite smile before shifting her focus to her son and changing her expression to something far from a smile. "Izuku hasn't done me the pleasure of telling me your name though." Izuku's panicked reaction and then pleading glance urges the girl to answer, "Kyoka. Kyoka Jiro." Embarrassed enough for one day, she starts backing away and gestures with a pointed thumb over her shoulder. I should probably go. Of course, you wouldn't want to keep your parents waiting. Inko bows to bid her a farewell before waving goodbye. Lovely meeting you. Why you too? Kyoka shouts over her shoulder before taking the chance to flee. Bye. Jiru. Izuku whispers to himself as he lowers the hand he was about to wave with. Abandoned by his friend to his mother's vices, he accepts his fate by bravely facing his mother head on. Well, and here I was worried about my baby the whole way here, just to find you getting all lovey-dovey with a girl. She crosses her arms and gives him a disappointed stare as opposed to an angry rant though. Izuku is caught off guard, but quickly recovers. I wasn't lovey-dovey, Mom. She's just a friend. He waves his hands in denial with a matched shake of his head. He winds up casting a look down the hall to make sure Kyoka didn't overhear them. Tracking his gaze, Inko raises a brow. For a friend, she sure did enjoy feeling up your chest, and smirks when she sees the boy's blush return. She laughs at how easy it is to get one over on him. Mom. Izuku whines indignantly to make her stop. When Inko does finish teasing her son, each of their faces level out and they both become serious. Mom. Izuku meets her gaze and takes a tentative step forwards. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Oh, Izuku. Inko's eyes water as she holds her son's stare. I'm not sick. Her response almost relieves the boy even though he knows it's a lie. Although, he can tell by the sad tone of her voice that she's not well. He's not fooled when she pulls him into a hug. It's until Inko says, I'm dying, that he realizes she was just clarifying the severity of the disease and not telling him she'd be okay. Things wouldn't be okay again for a long time. A searing sensation of pain pulls at his face, taking the rest of his head with the force. All of the structure to his neck tightens, straining with the arched backwards drag of parabola. No longer can he see anything but the blue sky, colors blotting his vision with the clouds. A thin wire swings in the air, reflected by a dim beam of sunlight. He can't locate his torso or his legs, but he knows they're falling with him thanks to that skinny little string. As he descends, he can feel his chest tightening. The boy's bated breath quickens while he braces for impact. The bright atmosphere above him darkens as it's covered by a cement ceiling. When he touches down with the mixture of gravel and dirt beneath his body, he stares straight upwards at the bottom of a bridge. A canal runs behind him, the flow of the river's resonating sound flooding his ears. Then the cackles of bullies break through his hearing like little popping bubbles. His vision swims and he feels like he's drowning when a warm liquid dribbles down from his right nostril. The same way he had been dragged here against his will, Izuku is manhandled by the group of 3 other boys to get propped upright. Izuku's view of the overpass belly shifts to his tormentors. Suddenly, his brain registers the reason why his face is laced with so much pain. He had been punched. He thinks his nose is broken but the bullies won't let him check. Overly extended fingers grip the back of Izuku's head to hold it in place, the nails digging into the boy's scalp. The stretched appendages belong to a bully whose school uniform is unbuttoned and disheveled, the delinquent fashion sense topped off by a backwards cap. He goes to order a junior high the same as Izuku. Ahead of Izuku, side by side with his former friend Katsuki Bakugo, is a plump boy kept afloat by 2 draconic wings. The flying bully's rounded face grins ear to ear, smile reaching the sideburns of brown shaven hair. He snickers before ceasing the flap of his wings and stepping foot on the earth's soil. Grandpa says you got a quirk now. Katsuki forms a fist and smacks it against the palm of his other hand, cracking his knuckles so that the resounding pop sounds like sparks coming from his quirk. Show us what it is, shitty Deku. The spiky-haired blonde spits his demands that literal saliva droplets spray out of his mouth. Izuku struggles in vain against the grip of elongated fingers coming from the bully behind him. The sound of rushing water in the canal reminds the boy of his transformation on the pier. Tears prickle at his eyes and his lip quivers before the rest of his body begins shaking. I can't. Katsuki's eye twitches, his knee-jerk reaction to the refusal one of anger. Why the fuck not? The blonde glares into the innocent green orbs of his former friend with burning red dots in search of an honest answer. When Izuku doesn't respond right away, Katsuki comes to his own assumed conclusion. You think it's better than mine, nerd. I doubt that. The bully with stretched fingers cackles confidently. A cocky grin stretches across his face as he tilts his head to one side. You sure you heard right, Tsubasa? Maybe your grandpa meant someone else. I know what I heard. The bully with wings bristles before crossing his arms. He holds the pose while pondering to himself in deep contemplation for a bit. Then, snaps his fingers upon having an epiphany. I know. Get his shirt off. What? The boy forcing Izuku to stay still jerks Izuku with him when he recoils in shock. Katsuki doesn't have quite as outward a perturbed reaction other than his face scrunching up and the question, why? Tsubasa flaps his arms at his sides with a beat of his wings, agitated that his friends aren't listening to him. There's supposed to be something attached to his chest, just it. He begins stomping towards Izuku to prove his claims himself. However, a grin finds itself on his face when Katsuki comes with him moments later. And no, wait, Izuku's eyes widen when he sees the two bullies reaching for him. He twists and turns his body so that they have a hard time removing his school blazer. The resistance is met with extra force, the third bully's fingers clinging to him tighter. Hold still, fucking Deku, Katsuki complains when Izuku successfully makes the fabric of his shirt slip through the blonde's fingers. The bully's victim only prolongs the inevitable though. Eventually, Tsubasa's and Katsuki's combined efforts rip Izuku's top covering off. A string dangles from the boy's bare chest, earning a sneer from Katsuki. What the fuck is this shit? Whoa, talk about lame. Tsubasa gives the wire an unimpressed look. It had slipped free from Izuku's clothes when he had been punched, but the winged boy and the other bullies had failed to notice it until now due to how small and thin it is. Katsuki turns his head side to side, giving the anatomically incorrect attachment a more analytically critical stare. The blonde's eyes squint until they can't narrow anymore without closing. What are you? A shitty wind-up doll? He sounds disappointed while his face morphs into a deep frown. The bully holding Izuku breaks into a fit of laughter. Yeah, you gonna play us a lullaby if we pull on it? His stretched fingers probe for the thin strings handle with a tiny twiddle. Izuku draws away from the prying hand, panic overtaking his features. No, don't. But his rebellion is easily overpowered and he can only watch with wide eyes as the string attached to his sternum gets pulled on. It's not Izuku's words that sputter, but the ignition of chainsaws that rev themselves to life. Metallic teeth wrest away the flesh of the boy's forearms, the mutilated meat making way for the bar that cleaves between his ring finger and middle finger. Blood doesn't just gush out, the liquid bursts forth in violent jets of red. Izuku's face is torn down the middle, ripped apart until the mangled flesh caught on the suddenly sprouted saw's chain flings off the sharp bits of steel and splatters into the dirt. Pointed fangs and a yellow glare surfaces from the groom. Holy shit, the boy that had been holding onto Izuku loses his grip immediately. He retreats from the chainsaws to hide behind Katsuki and Tsubasa. What the fuck? Katsuki is aghast by what he sees. Sweat dribbles down his forehead and he pants heavily, overwhelmed by the heat of what feels like a dangerous fire that's just been lit. Izuku recluses from him, pointing the chainsaws sprouting from his arms downwards so that they do no accidental harm. I told you not to. His voice holds an echo of how he'd usually sound that matches his mannerisms, but there's a malformed quality to it that still leaves the bullies wary. Don't be scared. I won't hurt you, I swear. Izuku's sharp teeth glisten with his own blood. This is crazy. Tsubasa takes a step back to put some distance between the chainsaw boy and himself. The wings on his back quiver, ready to take flight should he be forced to choose between fight or flight. Izuku's chainsaw-mounted head swivels towards Katsuki, desperation radiating from the yellow orbs that serve as his set of eyes. The blonde boy flinches back when he meets the stare, but he at least recognizes the pleading shout that comes from the demonic visage, Kaken. Fuck off. I ain't scared, Katsuki snaps when he hears the annoying nickname that the nerd had given him when they were younger. He's reminded of the timid boy that he grew up with as a neighbor and looks past the chainsaw transformation. He's still the same old weakling Deku. Tsubasa shoots Katsuki a look of uncertainty, still iffy about Izuku's metamorphosis. He keeps his feet planted, refusing to go anywhere near the macabre of chainsaws. But Bakugo. Now he's got a. The boy pauses to glance over at Izuku before lowering his voice just above that of a whisper, a villain's quirk. Still hiding behind Tsubasa, the bully with a backwards baseball cap hears his friend and has an epiphany. No way. I just realized. The delinquent raises one of his shaking, stretchy fingers to point at Izuku. You don't think his dad is Toxic Chainsaw, do you? Hearing that accusation about his absent father, Izuku jumps upright to refute those claims. No. He works overseas. He's not. Yeah, right. I bet that was a lie your mom told you to make you feel better. The long-fingered bully yells over Izuku's shouting before cowering behind the boys that he's using as human shields. Your dad's totally a villain. Tsubasa nods in agreement with his friend while trying to swap places to no longer be the one positioned in front. No, he's not. Izuku wails through sharpened teeth as his arm saws carve into the ground soil. The bullied boy would be weeping if his transformation allowed him to. Tell them, Kaken, Izuku pleads to his childhood friend to defend his family's honor with hopeful desperation. Katsuki holds his tongue, staring at the bizarre monsterification of Izuku Midoriya. He studies the blood-soaked school uniform dangling from the boy's body, the same as the string attached to the base of Izuku's chest. Brown like the dirt, the sleeves are shredded from where the chainsaws came out. Katsuki knows for a fact that Quirk isn't even your own, is it? Tsubasa twists his head to look towards Katsuki in confusion. Huh. What's that mean? But the blonde ignores his fellow bullying partner. Katsuki's focus is on Izuku even while the boy avoids looking back at him. Is it, Deku? Katsuki shouts to regain Izuku's attention. Slowly, Izuku raises his steel-covered head. The chainsaw protruding from the base of the boy's skull is a familiar sight to the blonde even if he hadn't seen it on Izuku before now. Kaken. Pokita is, and Izuku's weak wet voice is all the confirmation that Katsuki needs to finish putting two and two together. Tsubasa shares a quick glance with the boy next to him, not quite getting it himself. Bakugo, what did you mean by that? The shaven-headed bully tries prying for answers again when the baseball hat bully shakes his head. Quiet, Katsuki snaps for the two extras to shut up. Then he looks back at Izuku and asks about the nature of his childhood friend's Quirk. It was your shitty dog, wasn't it? Izuku rests his head on his hand, propped up by an arm. The boy's gaze is cast down at the lead of the pencil in his other hand that scribbles back and forth. Instead of taking notes during his classes, he's currently doodling on the paper atop his desk. Today is proving no better a day of school than yesterday despite the regular lessons thus far. He can't focus with his mother's poor health on his mind either. When present, Mike urges everyone to participate. Alrighty. Everybody get those hands up if you know the answer to the question. Show me some spirit. Izuku keeps his head down like everybody else. The hero does his best to make the lessons as entertaining as possible, but Izuku just isn't in the mood. It's not until the afternoon when hero training is scheduled that the boy becomes more alert. A gust of wind blowing through the door instead of the window raises the hairs on his neck. Heavy footfalls announcing a huge presence catches his ears. The green in his eyes becomes more vibrant when he looks upwards. The number one hero, All Might, enters the classroom. Izuku's favorite idol is enough to lift his spirits, perking him right up. I am here. The symbol of peace announces his arrival with an extravagant flourish of the cape that trails behind his brisk movements, coming through the door like a normal person. The boisterous boom of the massive man's voice travels through the room, getting the class pumped like a crowd at a concert. It's All Might, Eijiro excitedly exclaims the obvious with an eager lean forward. Stars dance in his eyes, beaming as bright as his pointed grin. Incredible. As expected of UA, Tenya claps his hands together in an effort to get a standing ovation from the rest of the class. He's the only one that gives a round of applause. Is he really gonna teach us? Hunter smiles a bit more broadly than Eijiro as he glances around the room to gauge everybody else's reactions to All Might as their teacher. The pink girl with horns adorning the top of her head points out the outdated suit that the hero chose to wear. That's his Silver Age costume. It's a uniform that gives nostalgia but a questionable choice during the modern day. A red and yellow mismatch of muscle expands and contracts as the mighty hero gives a hearty guffaw in response to the children's reactions. Izuku marvels as his idol silences them all by sheer laughter alone, commanding respect without throwing around his authoritative position. It's good that you're all so lively. You're going to need that energy for today's activity. All Might reaches behind his back before brandishing two cards in each hand. Kanji reads, training, on the left and battle, on the right. All Might sweet drops before switching the two and correcting his presentation. Battle training. The announcement gets the class hyped enough to completely overlook and dismiss the mistake, much to the hero's relief. No time to dally. Basic hero training is a class that will put you through all sorts of exercises to mold you into heroes. He rolls with the crowd's wave of cheers before tossing the labeled cards over his massive shoulders and replacing them with a tiny remote. You were wondering why I wore my old costume. Well, because today you'll be adorning your own outfits. All Might presses a button on the small device and cubicle lockers begin descending from the ceiling over each respective student's desk. A round of awe overcomes the teens when they witness the spectacle of technology. In accordance with the Quirk registry and the special request forms that all of you filled out before being admitted, these are, All Might tells them all what's inside each of their private containers before they even have the opportunity to look inside them. Costumes. A large margin of the class cheer together while they each begin opening their lockers. Vacuum-sealed bags lay stacked atop the other in the bins, clothes distributed evenly and any support items stowed away in a separate slot. Izuku clutches his own uniforms bagging closely to his chest. He remembers a time when he was younger that he had fantasized what his hero suit would look like. Being such an All Might fanboy, most of his early designs were just rehashes or cheap replicas of the #1 hero. After getting his quirk and maturing with age though, Izuku started to think more practically. Izuku rolls up the sleeves of his white dress shirt, folding them at the cuff and then refolding them until they reach his elbows. It was either a zipper or buttons for him to have easy access to the ripcord fixed to his chest. He went with a button down considering the look could be less conspicuous than a straight-up jumpsuit. To appear a little more formal, Izuku included a black tie. His father had never taught him how to wear one properly, that it hangs loosely, but it matches the untucked hem of his shirt in a sense of style. When Izuku reconjoins with everybody else, he's relieved to see a variety of peers that went both ways so he doesn't have to worry about feeling like the odd one out. He's especially glad to find out Kyoka's costume is much like his own in terms of appearing like ordinary clothes. The girl wears a black leather jacket despite the sweltering sun's heat, which makes the boy chuckle. Her boots have stereos built into their shafts, no doubt for her quirk's optimization. And Izuku's eyes can't help but be drawn to the choker around her neck. Kyoka gives him a once-over during the same time that he takes in her fashion sense. Plain approach, huh? Her smile turns slightly sly as her eyes travel towards his messy tie. Suits you. Having had prior experience fixing her father's ties, she adjusts it properly for him. Though this looks a bit better, Izuku blushes only a little bit, much to his credit, when she invades his space to help him. The boy tries to redirect his gaze elsewhere while he mumbles in his defense, "Your clothes are pretty normal too, ya know." Kyoka raises a single eyebrow before backing away. "That's not very nice." Her hands go on her hips while she feigns offense. "Shouldn't you know that you're always supposed to tell a girl she looks nice?" Izuku blinks when he returns his gaze to her. He has to quickly look away again. "You do." His next mumble comes with a blush that has Kyoka keeping her brow raised. Izuku shifts from foot to foot before clarifying, "Look nice, I mean." Kyoka's blush matches the same hue as her salmon pink shirt. It's her turn to look away, completely embarrassed by the compliment. "Shush, shut it." She raises her jacks as a threat when she senses his eyes still on her. Not the neck. Izuku covers his throat with his hands to avoid getting jabbed by the weaponized jacks. However, by defending only that part of his body, he leaves his torso exposed. "My kidney." He feels a jolt go through him when Kyoka uses her quirk to blast his side with the vibration of her heartbeat. While Izuku cradles in on himself, he completely misses the arrival of another. "Whoa, looking fancy." A feminine voice aimed at him is his only way of knowing somebody else has joined him and Kyoka in their conversation. He hadn't anticipated that. "Didn't expect that from you, Deku," but nothing could have prepared him for that same girl to use his childhood nickname either. Izuku sits up, the pain in his side from Kyoka's attack long forgotten. What did you just call me?" His voice sounds distant from him while he tries to catch up with what he just heard a classmate address him as. It's the girl with the brunette bob, the one that he rescued from the zero-pointer. She's wearing some sort of skin-tight black and pink space-themed suit that shows off her body's shape. "Deku, isn't that your name?" But Izuku is more fixated on the words leaving her mouth rather than the rest of her. Why would you think that? He can't help but let some of his frustration slip into his tone when he recalls all the years of bullying he had to endure with that nickname. The girl picks up on his mood and loses her oblivious bubbliness, joy bursted by nerves. She anxiously wrings her hands together while saying, Bakugo was calling you that earlier, so I thought. It's a cruel nickname that means useless, but Izuku hears enough that he stops her mid-sentence. He's not sure if his former friend is spreading rumors or trying to start trouble, but he shoots the blonde a glare regardless. Katsuki returns the look with a glower of his own. Noticing the tension between the two boys and realizing that she made a grave mistake, the brunette hastily tries to apologize. She steps towards Izuku to grab his arm. Oh. I'm sorry, I didn't. Shall we begin, zygotes? But All Might crashing down like a comet interrupts any and all conversations that Class 1A is having. An epic pickup of dust sweeps through the small crowd, anyone with capes or hair exposed having both blown into disarray. All Might shouts over everyone's coughing as they fan away the fine particles, onto indoor anti-personnel battle training. But we're outdoors. The girl resembling a frog tentatively raises her hand to gain All Might's attention. She notably wears a green wetsuit to match her theme and overall aesthetic. All Might scratches the top of his head, between the two large tufts of hair that spring up like a set of bunny ears. Well, villain battles are most commonly seen outdoors. However, statistically, the most heinous of villains are more likely to hide away indoors. He gestures to the buildings that they'll soon be entering as though that resolves the girl's comment. But all the hero does is pose more potential inquiries. They are. A disembodied voice comes from somewhere amongst the collection of students. It takes All Might a moment to realize the person that spoke is completely invisible, only a pair of shoes and gloves to prove their existence. How come we never hear anything about that? A boy with a fit physique like his teacher glances around at his peers as though they might know the answer to his question. Black market deals, house arrest, the works. The clever villains lurk in the shadows. Trust me, but All Might beats them to the punch. Before any more interruptions can stall his momentum, the hero carries on with his lesson. You'll now be split into hero teams and villain teams so you can face off in 2-on-2 indoor battles. So no basic training. The frog girl tilts her head to the side inquisitively without raising her hand for permission to speak this time. All Might clenches his fist as though he's crushing a stress ball that nobody else can see while he blows off the question with the answer. Practical experience teaches you the basics. Like the robots during the entrance exam, the shortest of the class draws All Might's heightened gaze downwards towards the boy with balls atop his head. All Might flicks his index finger forward to point at the boy, singling him out to state firmly, the distinct difference being that you won't be fighting robots, young man. Izuku finds himself subconsciously nodding, thinking about the damage that can be done with his quirk and the intense contrast between machine and human. Fuck the difference, but not everybody in his class shares that same sentiment. Especially not Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku frowns when he sees his childhood bully popping off a few sparks via explosive quirk. Can't I just blow everyone away? All Might opens his mouth to respond to the blonde, but gets interrupted by the girl with the pointed ponytail. What determines victory? At least she has the decency to raise her hand. Are you going to threaten to expel someone like Mr. Aizawa did? Not like the brunette girl who keeps her arms tight at her sides. She nervously looks up at All Might, expecting the same treatment as their homeroom teacher. How do we proceed to divide ourselves into teams? Tenya chops in a straight solid line with his hand as though he's splitting the groups himself. He stands at the center of the class, trying to draw All Might's attention from the other questions to have his own answered. How fabulous is my cape? But a boy covered in glitter and sparkling armor outshines Tenya like a living spotlight. The shawl in question flails around with extravagant gestures to draw everybody's eyes. Holy shit, these kids are killing me faster than my injury. All Might grumbles through gritted teeth as he places a heavy hand over his left side. Before anyone else can bombard him with any more questions, he shouts over them all, just a moment. And takes the time to flip through a manual. Everyone is shocked to see the teaching booklet that the number one hero frantically searches for answers. But what shocks them even more is when he snaps it shut to reclaim control of the situation. Listen up. Here's the deal. The villains have a bomb to guard and the heroes have to retrieve it. There's a limited amount of time for either team to successfully capture the other or achieve those objectives. The frog-like girl slowly starts raising her hand from her crouched position. What about? Your battle partners will be decided by drawing lots, but All Might cuts her off when he pulls a set of boxes seemingly out of thin air. Any other questions before we proceed? The hero is just as quick to end the string of inquiries before anyone else can try interjecting. No. Great. Much to the frog girl's disdain, but the first team is comprised of Midoriya and Uraraka. All Might draws 2 balls from the first box to begin creating duos. Izuku looks around his classmates before identifying Uraraka as the brunette girl he's already relatively acquainted with. They will be. All Might reaches into the other small crate before announcing, villains. Izuku feels a twinge in his chest. He tells himself it's all by chance, not done deliberately. Yet, he can't help but succumb to a mood swing. Any excitement he had felt about technically meeting All Might and engaging with his classmates during hero training dissipates. All he can see is Katsuki's cocky grin aimed his way. All he can hear is the echo in the back of his mind that he's on the villain team. They'll be up against, and the situation only worsens for him when All Might announces his opponent, Bakugo. Izuku almost misses hearing who Katsuki's teammate will be, and Ida, his mind falling further into a spiral of distraught emotions. He doesn't listen to All Might declaring the other teams, nor does he fully comprehend going through the motions of preparing for the start of the first round. He vaguely recalls Kyoka's encouragement when he finally comes to the actual battlegrounds, but by then it's too late to thank her. His partner, Uraraka, looks at him with concern as she removes the visor covering her face. Are you okay? She stares at him with auburn eyes that seem sincere enough to Izuku that he relaxes in her company. Though anxiety lingers over him still due to Bakugo. Yeah. Izuku's response is an unconvincing whisper that keeps Uraraka staring. He clears his throat and tries sounding more resolved as he says louder, thanks for asking. The brunette takes the hint, nodding. So, Bakugo is the one that gave you that mean nickname, huh? She surprises Izuku when she expresses herself as having a lot of energy with a fist pump. Let's use this as an opportunity to get back at him. The boy blinks back his shock as she explains, I don't like that he tricked me into calling you something you don't like, so I'd like a little payback myself. It won't be so easy, but Izuku diverts his focus from her to the dark hallway ahead of them. He half expects his enemy to come flying out of it already. He'll be coming for me regardless of what Ida says. The boy's gaze flicks back to the fake nuclear weapon that they're supposed to guard, plus we've got the bomb to protect. So it's like you and Bakugo are fated rivals then. You two will duke it out one-on-one. Uraraka mimes having a boxing match by jabbing at the air. When she sees Izuku isn't quite as enthused by the prospect of fighting his childhood bully, she simmers down. Does that mean you'll be using your quirk? The girl tries to be as delicate as possible as she treads the topic of his quirk like thin ice. Izuku looks down at himself, placing a hand over his chest. He feels the rise and fall of it as he breathes. Probably not. His voice is distant while his mind wanders to the past. Bakugo. He's a jerk, but I can't risk killing him. When he's finally finished reflecting, Izuku drops his hand and refocuses on Uraraka to ask, what about you? What's your quirk? At that, the brunette perks right back up. Oh, I can make things float. She lightly taps on the fake nuke to demonstrate. The object lifts into the air and levitates in place just like she said. So long as all 5 of my fingers touch the item, each digit twiddles on her hand before she brings them together and deactivates her quirk. Izuku hums as he places his hand to his chin to come up with a strategy. The bomb is made of paper mache, so it's not too heavy already, but that'll help make it a bit more mobile. He thinks aloud so that his partner can follow along. Ida is fast. I recognize his name as part of the Ingenium family. Whoa, really? She interrupts with an exclamation of shock upon discovering her classmate is related to a pro hero. Izuku nods and gestures for her to settle down. Yes, but listen. He's fast, so you're gonna have to stay ahead of him and not sit in one place if we're to split up. He glances over his shoulder to look down the hallway ahead of them. He suddenly wishes they had explored the facility a bit more to know the layout better. Got it. That's a good plan. Uraraka nods along and gives her teammate a thumbs up in approval of his idea. She doesn't share his concerns about going into the battle ill-prepared. And he doesn't have the chance to change that problem since the buzzing alarm that indicates the match has begun goes off right then and there. I'm glad you think so. "'Cause we just ran out of time to come up with another one," he sighs solemnly as he runs a hand through his hair in worry. Good luck. Uraraka remains optimistic though. She uses her quirk on the paper mache nuke and starts carrying it upstairs. "You too," he responds just loud enough for her to hear before heading in the opposite direction. He figures the least he could do is try luring the enemy team away from her to stall for time. Izuku waits until he's descended a few floors before pausing to remove his shoes. He hopes that this will stop his footfalls from echoing every time he steps on the concrete ground. He also stops to undo his tie, wrapping the cloth around a hand before closing it into a fist. The moment of preparation quells some of his nerves before he continues moving stealthily down the stairs. When Izuku rounds the next corner though, he has only a mere second to react. An explosion aimed right at his face blinds him as he ducks down to avoid taking the full brunt of the blast. The force of the detonation drives him back and some of the fire is just too close to avoid that his clothes get singed along with his hair. Through the ash and soot is none other than Katsuki Bakugo, the blonde boy's outfit comprised of grenade gauntlets and tactical military gear. "Nice dodging, Deku." Katsuki grinds out a sarcastic snarl through gritted teeth. Izuku spares a look behind the savage boy to see if Tenya is with him but figures the blonde must have gone rogue when finding nobody. "I knew you'd come for me alone." Izuku doesn't know whether to smile or sneer back at his old friend turned bully. He settles for a bitter laugh while getting into a fighting stance. Katsuki rears his right arm back, winding up for a punch. "I'll fuck you up just enough not to get disqualified," but his cocky approach is intercepted by Izuku grabbing onto the arm and using it against him. The blonde is hoisted over Izuku's shoulder and flipped onto his back. "You always lead with a right hook." Izuku explains how he was able to see the boy's move coming from a mile away before raising his fists to continue the fight and fixing his opponent with a glare. "I've seen it enough times to know." "You fucker." Katsuki angrily gets to his feet to attack again. The rage-fueled charge is something Izuku sees coming in advance too. He pulls his tie through each hand to extend it while bending low to counter Katsuki. Izuku then uses the thin cloth to trip the blonde by wrapping it around his ankle and pulling. Katsuki stumbles, landing on his shoulder before righting himself. The blonde's instinct takes over and he lets off a controlled blast to ward Izuku away. Though small, the explosion takes its toll and blows Izuku into the nearest wall. Smoke billows between both boys as they heave themselves to standing positions. "Use your shitty dog's quirk already." Katsuki lashes out with more miniature bursts. Izuku leans away from him, avoiding the full force of the blasts. His clothes continue to get scorched though, along with the blemishes across his skin. A boot plants itself between Izuku's ribs, kicking him into the handrail of the staircase thereby. "You don't belong here with that villainous quirk." Katsuki's shouts are louder than the ringing in Izuku's ears as he dodges the next assault. "I'm the villain." Izuku gasps as he staggers back. His face contorts into an angry expression that challenges Katsuki's. "You're the one who can create explosions and used them to terrorize me when we were younger." His bitter bite is met by a roar from the blonde before another eruption of flame destroys a wall's foundation. Izuku rolls across the floor, fragments of cement pelting him when he lands on his back. He hardly has the time to turn over before Katsuki pursues him with another assault. "I'm gonna bring the villain out of ya and show you." Izuku takes a punch that rattles his jaw before being blown into another room. The explosions coming from Katsuki up till now were deliberate, each one meant to destroy the cameras recording their battle as much as they had been directed towards Izuku. "If you're worried about everyone else seeing, don't worry, I only want you to realize the truth about yourself." Katsuki stomps towards the impact hole he created to yell into it. He hoists the heavy gauntlet attached to his arm upwards to rest in his other hand. The pin to the grenade-shaped device rests on his finger like a trigger. The dark smog wafting from the damaged infrastructure conceals Izuku, but Katsuki knows the boy is somewhere in there. "Come here, Deku. Let me teach you how we do battle in the hero course." Katsuki yells into the void again to goad his enemy. A grin overcomes the blonde's facial features when he hears vitriolic vengeance reverberating as the sound of a chainsaw's ignition. The flurry of spinning metal teeth that barrels through the smoke yells back, "Come on then. Teach me." That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.